Hi there, it's Llarold, and this is our Battle for Azeroth Protection Warrior class guide. If you'd like more info on how all the tanks stack up against each other, check out our video comparing all the tanks. It is still up to date and accurate as of this point. On that note, if Blizzard makes changes to warriors, we'll be ready, so look out for updates either in the comment section here if the changes are small, or if the changes are big, we'll be making entire new videos to cover them, so be ready for that. Alright, let's get to it. Let's start with talents. This is a standard talent build that prot warriors should be using for 90% of BFA content, but here are a few talents that might switch around a bit. Punish in the first tier is good, but it can't compete with Into the Fray unless you're tanking one enemy or are out of range of your allies. There are some raid bosses where that will be an issue, so Punish will be useful for that, but that is about it. In the fourth tier, Bolster is virtually always the best talent, especially with how it gets buffed by anger management in the last tier. And I think it's worth mentioning that when you do have Last Stand active, you shouldn't cast Shield Block. Let it recharge, that way you're getting 100% blocks the whole time Last Stand is active, and you're getting a free recharge of Shield Block. One final note on that though, the block increase from Last Stand will not count as Shield Block for any bosses with abilities that do an active mitigation check. Sorry. Finally, in the 6th tier, Devastator can be useful in Mythic Dungeons, although it is still a lot weaker than it was in Legion. And now here's the Protection Warrior ability priority for BFA. The stat priority for Protection Warriors is pretty straightforward. One important thing to note, Strength is a lot more powerful in BFA than it was during Legion. Strength trinkets are good and item level upgrades are usually worth wearing even if the secondary stats aren't quite as good. Now let's move on to Azerite traits, and it's important to note that while the effects in these tooltips are accurate, the tuning on them is not. That being said, they have been tested pretty exhaustively, so let's dive in. Brace for Impact is the best overall trait, and you can very easily maintain at least 1 or 2 stacks at all times. With a little luck, you can get up to 3 stacks at some points, which is pretty nice. Iron Fortress is a simpler, slightly less effective alternative to Brace for Impact. If Brace for Impact were a food, it would be a double cheeseburger. It's fantastic, and everybody loves a double cheeseburger. Iron Fortress would be a regular cheeseburger. If I gave you a cheeseburger, you'd be happy. It's great. But next to a double cheeseburger? It's a little disappointing. Deafening Crash is a good DPS increase trait, and a very nice 1-point wonder. The Demo Shout duration increase does not scale with the number of traits you have invested in Deafening Crash, but it does increase Demo Shout's duration by 2 seconds per Thunderclap, not 1. As a result, it's worth 4 or 6 extra seconds on each Demo Shout, which is pretty great. Those 3 traits are the ones you'll want to wear if you have the choice. And if you're specifically targeting bosses, Harlan Sweet in Freehold and Viggoth in Siege of Borealis each drop 2 pieces with good traits. So go after those guys. Now beyond those 3 excellent traits, there are 3 more not-so-great traits, and here goes. Reinforced Plating is a simple stacking strength buff granted by blocking. It's okay, it's just not as good as the first 3 traits. Callous Reprisal is a similar DPS increase to Deafening Crash, but it's just not as good. And the debuff it applies is a neat idea, but not really tuned high enough to be playstyle altering or interesting or all that appealing. Last up is Bloodsport, and it's a bit of a weird one. It's extremely good for reducing damage taken from unblockable sources such as spell damage. In that category, it's the best trait for Protection Warriors, and hanging onto a few pieces of gear with Bloodsport on them for progression rating might not be a bad idea. That being said, it's pretty mediocre for reducing blockable damage, and the leech buff really doesn't add up to much at all. Well, I think that about covers it. If you have any questions about Prot Warrior, ask away. We're super excited for BFA, and we hope you are too. Stay tuned for more great BFA content, and as always, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.